What if the biggest royal heartbreak of the 21st century didn't happen on television, in tabloids, or at Westminster Abbey, but in the quiet sigh of a man staring at a framed photograph he can't quite bring himself to hide? What if Prince Harry, the man who walked away from the British crown, renounced his titles, and claimed to find freedom, never really let go of the one woman who walked away from him first? And what if that woman's husband just warned him, in no uncertain terms? Stay away? That's the allegation sending shockwaves through royal watcher circles this week. Not a scandal about Meghan, not a tell-all from Montecito, but a private, pointed message from a quiet, powerful hotelier, Sam Cutmore-Scott, the man who married Chelsy Davy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Yes, that Chelsy Davy. The blonde Zimbabwean beauty who once set palace hearts racing and royal PR machines into overdrive. The woman the Queen quietly approved of. The woman the tabloids dubbed the real deal long before Meghan Markle ever entered the royal frame. Chelsy, the law student with a wild streak. Chelsy, the anti-Kate. Chelsy, who, despite it all, said no. No to tiaras. No to palaces. No to becoming Princess of Wales. And then disappeared into a quieter life. Until now. Because in the last 3 months, according to multiple insiders, something has changed. A comment made at a private dinner in California. A photograph left out on a shelf. A string of cryptic social media activity. A rumor of a letter, handwritten, sealed, maybe even leaked. And finally, a message, delivered through back channels, firm and unmistakable. Leave her alone. You see, this isn't just about an old flame. It's about unfinished business, unresolved feelings, and the emotional earthquake that still rumbles beneath Harry's carefully curated post-royal life. Let's rewind. Not to Meghan. Not even to the days of Harry's wild Las Vegas antics or party prince tabloid labels. Let's go back to the years before the storm, when Harry was still a serving officer, still a favorite of the British public, and still in love with someone who didn't want the crown. Chelsy Davy. Their relationship spanned years, endured distance, and, for a time, looked like destiny. Friends described them as electric together. Passionate, intense, and often volatile, yes, but deeply bonded. And it wasn't just emotional, it was political. Insiders have long claimed that the Queen herself saw potential in Chelsy, that she viewed her as a stabilizing influence on the fiery young prince. Unlike Meghan, Chelsy didn't chase cameras or court controversy. She didn't challenge the institution. She simply declined it. But now, all these years later, a haunting question looms. Did Harry ever really move on? Did he truly choose Meghan? Or did he simply choose the only path forward when the door to the past slammed shut? And more urgently, what does Sam Cutmore-Scott know that prompted him to send a warning? Because make no mistake, Sam is not a man who seeks headlines. He's not a celebrity, not an influencer, not someone who thrives in the glare of a royal-adjacent spotlight. In fact, most people couldn't pick him out of a lineup, which is exactly how he likes it. But Sam is also no fool. He's a shrewd businessman, a former Eton classmate of James Middleton, and a man whose family has deep roots in British society. He may not be a royal, but he moves in those rarefied circles, and he understands, better than most, the value of silence, the power of reputation, and the importance of boundaries, especially when it comes to his wife. Chelsy and Sam married quietly, without fanfare, in 2022. Their son was born soon after. They rarely post on social media. They grant no interviews. They live, as much as possible, under the radar. So when whispers began to surface that Harry, recently estranged from his family, struggling with press backlash, and allegedly unhappy in Montecito, had made a remark that hinted at lingering feelings for Chelsy, that was one thing. But when someone, a guest at a private event, leaked that Harry had shown a photo of Chelsy during a nostalgic conversation, that was quite another. The story gets murky here. Conflicting accounts, denials, PR spin. But the common thread is this. Harry, in a moment of vulnerability, may have said too much. And that comment may have reached Sam. What happened next? A line was drawn. Sources close to the Cutmore-Scott family claim Sam sent a direct message. Not through the press, not through an Instagram post, but through the old-school, behind-the-scenes channels used by British high society for generations. Short, polite, but unmistakably firm. Stay away. No contact. No reminiscing. No backdoor invitations to catch up, not even in passing. Because Chelsy Davy is not a character in Harry's memoir. She's a wife, a mother, a woman who chose not to become a royal, and paid the price for that choice in privacy, not publicity. And her husband? He's done watching her name get dragged into Harry's emotional orbit. Now here's where things get even more tangled. Because Meghan, reportedly, did not take this well. Insiders suggest that Meghan was blindsided by the entire Chelsy situation, that she was unaware of the private dinner, unaware of the photograph, unaware that Harry had been nursing what some call romantic nostalgia. And when she found out, let's just say, the fallout wasn't quiet. Sources claim that Meghan confronted Harry, demanded answers, asked whether his feelings for Chelsy had ever truly faded, or whether she had simply been the safe option, the available one, the one who said yes. Because no matter how many cameras you face, how many Netflix deals you sign, how many awards you present on global stages, there's always the shadow of the one who walked away. And that shadow has just stepped back into the narrative. Not by choice, not by scandal, but by proximity. Because you can't keep playing the same old emotional tapes without someone eventually pressing eject. There's also the question of timing. Why now? Why, after years of silence, would Harry suddenly bring up Chelsy? Why would that photograph be out in the open? Why would the message from Sam come now, and not a year ago? Or 5? Some believe Harry is spiraling. That the pressure of public rejection, family estrangement, and ongoing media battles have left him clinging to fragments of a simpler past. Others think this is a strategic play, a way to remind the world, and perhaps Meghan, that he once had another option, a quieter love, a different path. Still others, including some close to the palace, believe Harry is unraveling, that the emotional toll of leaving the firm, combined with growing friction in his California life, is cracking the facade. But no matter which version you believe, one fact remains. The message was sent. And when men like Sam Cutmore-Scott speak, they don't shout. They don't tweet. They don't call the press. They simply act. Which raises a haunting possibility. What if this isn't just a one-time warning? What if this is the start of something deeper? A cold war between the Duke of Sussex and the man who holds the heart he couldn't keep? Because the past doesn't stay buried. Not when photographs resurface. Not when conversations are overheard. Not when love, no matter how distant, leaves unfinished sentences in its wake. And that brings us here, to this moment, to the dinner in Montecito, to the framed photo, to the carefully worded message, to the confrontation behind palace walls, to the woman at the center of it all, once silent, now watching, and to the question echoing louder than ever. Did Prince Harry ever truly let her go? Because what comes next could change everything. What if Prince Harry's greatest heartbreak wasn't losing his military roles, his HRH title, or even his place within the royal family? What if it was losing her? Chelsy Davy, a name that still echoes with quiet weight in royal circles. A name that, for years, sat just beneath the surface of public discourse, rarely spoken, but never forgotten. A name that once made the Queen smile and made the tabloids salivate. And more hauntingly, a name that may still sit heavy in Harry's heart. Let's rewind to the early 2000s. The world was still reeling from the death of Princess Diana. Harry, just a teenager, was flailing, in grief, in rebellion, in search of something to anchor him. Enter Chelsy, not a debutante, not a duchess-in-waiting, but a wild-haired, sharp-eyed law student from Zimbabwe. Confident, unapologetic, magnetic. She wasn't interested in tiaras. She was interested in truth, laughter, freedom, and for a young prince raised in a gilded cage, she was oxygen. They met in Cape Town, far from the stiff formality of Buckingham Palace. It wasn't staged. It wasn't sanctioned. It was messy and real and utterly disarming. For the first time in years, Harry didn't feel like a royal. He felt seen. The media called her the party girl, but that label barely scratched the surface. Chelsy wasn't reckless. She was raw. She didn't crave headlines. She dodged them. She didn't want to be Princess Chelsy. She just wanted to be Chelsy. And that, perhaps, was the most irresistible thing of all. Now, let's pause for a moment. Have you ever had someone like that in your life? Someone who showed up at exactly the right moment. Not to complete you, but to crack you open? Someone who didn't need you, but still chose you? That was Chelsy for Harry. Their relationship was a storm, passionate, turbulent, deeply intimate. It spanned years, continents, breakups and makeups. It was the kind of connection that doesn't fade with time. It embeds. It lingers. But it couldn't last. Why? Because Chelsy knew something Harry didn't want to admit. The monarchy doesn't just marry people. It consumes them. The pressure, the scrutiny, the suffocating expectations. Chelsy once described the royal spotlight as unbearable. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being honest. Every outfit she wore was dissected. Every expression became tabloid fodder. Every private moment risked exposure. She had studied law. She had dreams of her own. Becoming a royal consort? That wasn't one of them. So she walked away. And Harry? He let her go. But did he ever really forgive himself for that? Let's consider the timeline. Their final split came in 2011, shortly after Prince William married Kate Middleton. Think about that. As the world celebrated the fairy tale wedding of the future king and queen, Harry was nursing a breakup no one wanted to talk about. The cameras were focused on the balcony kiss. But behind the palace curtains, another love story was ending. Privately, painfully, and in many ways, permanently. Or was it? Fast forward a few years. Harry starts dating Meghan Markle, an American actress. Confident, outspoken, charismatic. The press explodes. But something strange happens. Chelsy, who had remained largely silent for years, is spotted at Harry and Meghan's wedding. She arrives in a blue dress, sits quietly, smiles politely, but the cameras catch something else. A flicker. A moment during the ceremony, while Harry and Meghan exchange vows. When Chelsy appears, haunted. It's just a glance. But it speaks volumes. Some viewers say she looked heartbroken. Others say she looked relieved. But nearly everyone agrees. That wasn't the expression of someone entirely at peace. So why attend the wedding at all? Sources say Harry personally invited her. That despite the history, despite the emotional landmines, he wanted her there. Not out of cruelty, but out of longing. Out of gratitude. Out of some need to prove that what they had was real, and that it ended with grace. But did it? Because in the years that followed, something strange happened. Harry began speaking more and more about his past. Not just in interviews, but in his memoir Spare. He opened up about his mother, his trauma, his resentment toward the press, his battles with his father and brother. But one name remained notably absent. Chelsy. Oh, she was mentioned, briefly, but never explored. Never truly unpacked, as if the pain of revisiting that chapter was too great or too revealing. And then came the whispers that Harry kept a box of old letters, that he still had photos, mementos, reminders, that when he and Meghan hit their roughest patches, especially post-Megxit, he often grew quiet, reflective, distracted. Is it fair to speculate? Maybe not. But this is the man who once admitted, in an unguarded moment, that Chelsy was the only woman who understood what it meant to be with him. Let that sink in. Not accepted, not tolerated, understood. There's a difference. And maybe, just maybe, that difference still haunts him. Because here's the twist. For all of Meghan's strength, all her poise, all her ambition, she wasn't there in the early days. She didn't see the boy become the man. She didn't know the Harry who cried in silence at Sandhurst, who partied to numb the pain, who searched for peace in the deserts of Afghanistan and the clubs of London. Chelsy did. And that kind of knowing, you don't replace that. You bury it until something or someone brings it back to the surface. Which brings us to now, to the recent rumors. The alleged dinner in Montecito. The supposed comment that started it all. She got away. I thought I could forget. 7 words. But enough to shake 2 households. Enough to prompt a protective husband, Sam Cutmore Scott, to step in. Because maybe it's not about a grand affair or a rekindled romance. Maybe it's just about a prince who never fully healed. A man who traded love for duty and now wonders if he lost both. And let's be clear, this isn't a fairy tale. There are no glass slippers, no magic reunions, just broken timelines and what-ifs. Because the truth is, Harry and Chelsy were never perfect. They fought. A lot. They broke up and got back together more times than friends could count. They were chaotic, dramatic, deeply human. But isn't that the kind of love that leaves scars? The kind that stays under your skin long after the headlines fade? So now we ask, What if Chelsy was never the one who got away? What if Harry was? What if, deep down, he believes that? And what if Sam Cutmore-Scott just became the first person to say it out loud? Not with cruelty, but with clarity. Because behind the palaces, the paparazzi, and the Netflix deals, this isn't just a royal drama. It's a human one. Of love, loss, regret, and the road's not taken. And as for Chelsy, she's not speaking. Not officially. But her silence? It says more than any tabloid headline ever could. Because maybe she knows. This story isn't over. Not yet. And what comes next? Well, that's where everything could change. What kind of man marries the woman Prince Harry never forgot? What kind of man earns the loyalty of someone who once walked hand in hand with royalty, then deliberately stepped back? More importantly, what kind of man feels so certain in his role that he sends an unmistakable message to the Duke of Sussex himself? His name isn't famous. He doesn't have a title, no memoir, no reality show, no Instagram blue check. But his presence? It's undeniable. Meet Sam Cutmore-Scott, the quietly powerful, deliberately elusive husband of Chelsy Davy. He may not grace headlines often, but don't let that fool you. In the world of British high society, sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one who never raises his voice. So who is he really? Let's start with the basics. Sam Cutmore-Scott was born into a family of influence, but not the flashy kind. His background is steeped in old-school, generational wealth. Not royalty, but close enough to understand the rules they live by and the dangers they pose. Educated at Eton, yes, that Eton, Sam walked the same hallowed halls as princes, prime ministers, and CEOs. It's where tradition meets power, where future movers and shakers are molded, and where reputations are built or destroyed. He went on to study at Oxford, focusing on business and strategy, eventually stepping into the world of luxury hospitality. Not the Hilton kind. The curated, elite, behind-the-scenes experience reserved for dignitaries, billionaires, and celebrities who don't want to be seen, but do want to be remembered. He now serves as director of the Harper, an ultra-upscale boutique hotel in Norfolk. Think hushed hallways, private chefs, and five-star everything. The kind of place where discretion isn't a bonus, it's the brand. And that alone tells you everything you need to know about Sam. He doesn't post. He doesn't leak. He doesn't chase. He protects. He curates. He controls his environment. And when Chelsy Davy, the former wild child turned jewelry entrepreneur, crossed paths with him, it wasn't through flashy introductions or celebrity mixers. It was through the quieter, more selective circles of old money and legacy networks. They were introduced, reportedly, by mutual friends at a private London function. The setting? Quiet. The vibe? Intentional. Chelsy had just launched her own luxury jewelry line, Aya, and was shifting her life far away from paparazzi and press junkets. She wasn't looking for attention. She was looking for peace. And Sam offered exactly that. Where Harry had once been the whirlwind, Sam was the harbor. He didn't flinch when she talked about her past. He didn't question why she didn't speak about Harry. He didn't care about tabloids. He cared about Chelsy, not the myth, the woman. Let's be clear, this wasn't a rebound. This wasn't some spite-driven upgrade to one-up a royal ex. This was chemistry. Subtle, stable, sincere. And in a world where every public figure is one tweet away from scandal, Sam was, and remains, an anomaly. Even their engagement was quiet. No social media explosion. No photo ops. No diamond ring Instagram soft launches. Just a whisper among friends. And then a wedding. A very private one. Held in 2022, the ceremony was reportedly intimate, surrounded by only close family and friends. No press. No palace drama. No awkward seating arrangements. Chelsy wore a minimalist gown. Sam wore a quiet smile. They said their vows, welcomed their baby boy soon after, and retreated into the kind of life most public figures only pretend to crave. Now, you might ask, how does a man like Sam feel about his wife's past with a royal? Does it bother him? Does he ignore it? Does he secretly resent it? According to multiple sources, none of the above. Sam knows who Chelsy was. More importantly, he knows who she is now. He didn't marry a royal accessory. He married a fiercely independent, emotionally intelligent woman who chose to walk away from a life millions dream about. And that kind of self-awareness? That doesn't intimidate a man like Sam. It impresses him. So what changed? Why? After years of silence, did Sam reportedly send a message to Harry? Let's be clear. This wasn't a jealous husband lashing out. It was a strategic decision. Because there's one thing Sam doesn't tolerate: intrusion. When a line is crossed, he doesn't rant. He responds. And if the rumors are true, that Harry's recent comments about Chelsy were emotionally charged, that a photograph of her was left conspicuously on display during a private gathering, that whispers of unfinished love began swirling, then Sam likely saw the storm coming before anyone else. And he did what protectors do. He intervened. Not with a lawsuit. Not with a press conference. Not with a spectacle. With a message. Short. Sharp. Surgical. Stay away. It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. One Harry, for all his rebelliousness, would understand. Because Sam didn't just marry Chelsy. He married the history. The baggage. The headlines. The what-ifs. And he's not here to rewrite the past. He's here to protect the present. Let's talk about presence for a moment. Sam doesn't post selfies. He doesn't attend flashy events. But he's always there. At Chelsy's side, during launches, behind the scenes, in quiet support. He is the man who exists outside the lens but controls the frame. He knows exactly what a prince is capable of, both good and bad. He knows how one whispered line from Montecito can ignite a firestorm across oceans. He knows that silence can be read as permission, and he's not willing to grant that anymore. What's particularly fascinating is how the royal ecosystem responded. The palace said nothing. Of course. Meghan? Reportedly furious. Chelsy? Silent, but more guarded than ever. But it was Sam's move that changed the tone. Because for years, Harry had been the one setting the emotional tempo. In memoirs, in interviews, in subtle emotional cues that hinted at what could have been. Now, someone else has set the rhythm. And it's no longer nostalgic. It's resolute. There's also an unspoken tension at play. In the world of British aristocracy, confrontation is taboo. You don't send warnings. You hint. You raise an eyebrow. You disappear from the guest list. So for Sam to actively step forward, even privately, speaks volumes. It means something changed. And for Harry, that change may have landed like a slap. Because here's the thing. Men like Harry, raised in a world of deference, protocol, and unquestioned legacy, aren't used to being told no. Especially not by people without titles. But Sam? He doesn't need a title. He has something rarer. The trust of a woman who once walked away from a prince. And now, he's defending that trust. Calmly, completely, and with zero interest in playing to the cameras. Let me ask you something. If you were married to someone whose past was immortalized in newspapers, wouldn't you draw your own line? Wouldn't you want to protect what you've built from the ghosts of what could have been? Sam Cutmore-Scott isn't the villain. He's not the rival. He's not the man trying to outdo a prince. He's the man reminding the world, and one royal in particular, that Chelsy Davy has moved on, and that it's time Harry does, too. But what happens when a prince doesn't take kindly to being told where not to tread? What if those feelings he hinted at weren't just drunken nostalgia, but something more? Something still simmering beneath the surface? Because Harry's next move? It wasn't silence. It was a reply, and it crossed a line no one saw coming. 3 guests, 1 candlelit table, and a moment that would detonate quietly but powerfully across 2 continents. It didn't happen at a press event. It wasn't captured by paparazzi. There was no red carpet, no speeches, no Instagram story. It was just dinner. But behind that dinner, a storm. A storm Prince Harry didn't see coming. A storm that began, not with a scandal, but with a sentence. A sentence that may have unraveled years of healing. A sentence that hit harder than any tabloid headline ever could. She got away. I thought I could forget. That's what he said. Allegedly. And the moment he said it, everything changed. But let's not jump ahead. Let's go back to how it started, the dinner itself. According to multiple insider accounts, the gathering was small, intimate. Just 3 guests, maybe 4, in Harry and Meghan's Montecito estate. The kind of evening meant to be off the record, just friends catching up. It was late October. Meghan had returned from a brand strategy meeting. Harry had been in a brooding mood for days, something to do with a delayed documentary project and more legal tension with the UK press. The wine was flowing. The lighting was low. Spotify played soft jazz in the background. And as the conversation turned to life before the spotlight, someone, reportedly a mutual friend from Harry's past, asked him, "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" It was casual, almost careless, but Harry didn't laugh it off. He didn't brush it aside. He didn't change the subject. He stared at his glass for a long moment. And then he said it. "She got away. I thought I could forget." Boom. 6 words that froze the table. Now, to be fair, context matters. It could have been nostalgia. It could have been an emotional slip. It could have been a man mourning his own innocence more than an ex-girlfriend. But the way he said it? According to the leak, Harry didn't smirk. He didn't joke. He didn't look around to see who was listening. He just said it. And the air left the room. Meghan, reportedly, went still. She didn't flinch. She didn't explode. But her expression, for those who know her well, shifted from hosting warmth to quiet frost. Because while Meghan has always known about Chelsy, has always heard the name whispered in articles and royal biographies, she had never heard Harry speak about her that way. Not in that tone. Not like he'd been carrying something for years. Something unresolved. And here's the part that makes it worse. According to one source at the dinner, Harry wasn't drunk. He wasn't even tipsy. He was lucid, clear-eyed, tired, yes, but deliberate. And that makes what came next all the more explosive. Because someone, one of the guests, took out their phone and snapped a photo. Not of Harry, not of Meghan, but of something in the background. A framed photo, on a shelf, slightly dusty. Half hidden. It wasn't new. It wasn't prominently displayed. But it was visible. A photo of Harry and Chelsy. Young, carefree, somewhere outdoors. Laughing, leaning in. The kind of photo you don't frame unless it meant something. Now here's where things spiral. That photo wasn't meant for public eyes. It wasn't on display like a centerpiece. But it was there. It existed. And someone, allegedly thinking nothing of it, captured it in a snapshot of the room, purely for personal memories. Or so they claimed. But a few days later, that photo ended up in someone else's inbox. A friend of Sam Cutmore-Scott's. Whether it was forwarded accidentally or on purpose remains a mystery. What we do know is that within 48 hours, Sam knew. He knew about the dinner. He knew what Harry had said. He knew about the photo. And something in him, the protector, the husband, the man who lives far away from palaces and past regrets, decided this had gone far enough. But more on that in the next chapter. Let's linger a little longer at that table. Because according to another source, Meghan tried to recover the tone of the evening after Harry's slip. She poured more wine. She changed the subject. She even cracked a joke about how the past looks better in sepia tones. But the tension lingered. Harry had gone somewhere emotionally that he hadn't visited in years, maybe even since Spare was published. He talked, allegedly, about how Chelsy was the only person who truly knew him before the world got involved. How she loved him without headlines. How she didn't want the palace, and somehow, that made him want her more. And then, and this is key, he reportedly added, "Sometimes I wonder if I should have followed her instead of making her follow me." Pause. Let that line settle. Because in that sentence is the ghost of a decision Harry has carried for over a decade. And when you say something like that, in your own home, in front of your wife and a couple of friends, you're not just reminiscing. You're confessing. Let me ask you something. Have you ever said something in a moment of tired honesty, something you didn't mean to share, but once it's out, it can't be unsaid? That's what this moment was. And Meghan, to her credit, didn't cause a scene. But the next day, she reportedly had that photo taken down. Discreetly, quietly, but it disappeared. And the guest who took the original photo? They got a very polite call from someone close to Meghan's PR team. No threats, just a reminder. Photos taken at private events are not to be shared, even with friends. Damage control. Swift. Surgical. But not swift enough. Because Sam had already seen it. And Sam had already made a decision. Back at the dinner table, the guests eventually left. Meghan smiled. Harry thanked them. The night ended like any other. But upstairs, the conversation between husband and wife, by all accounts, was anything but ordinary. They didn't fight, but they didn't sleep early either. Because when someone says, "she got away," you don't just forget it the next morning. Especially not when she is someone the world once thought he'd marry. Especially not when she is still alive, still in London, still with her own life. And now, a husband who has just drawn a very sharp line in the sand. So what happens when past love echoes too loudly? What happens when a photo, a sentence, and a memory collide? What happens when someone else, someone outside the royal fishbowl, decides they're done being polite? Because what Sam Cutmore-Scott does next changes everything. Not with drama, not with rage, but with words that made Harry sit up. And for once, he wasn't the one in control of the story anymore. Sometimes the smallest things unravel the biggest lives. Not an affair, not a phone call, not a public statement or a leaked diary. A photograph, a quiet image on a shelf, slightly askew, covered in a thin layer of dust. A moment frozen in time, but still smoldering beneath the surface. And in this case, it was the photo that launched a private war. Let's rewind, not to the dinner, but to the days before it. Because that's when the photo, the one that would change everything, was quietly moved from a box in storage to a discreet corner of Prince Harry's private study. Not the hallway, not the living room, not Meghan's office. His, a space filled with memories, trinkets from military service, framed images of Diana, old books, and a few photos no one really asks about. But this one stood out. It wasn't formal. It wasn't posed. It was personal. Harry and Chelsy, mid-laughter, on safari, arms wrapped around each other, hair windswept. Sunset in the background. Pure, untouched affection. The kind of photo you keep in a drawer if you've moved on. The kind of photo you put back on the shelf when you haven't. And when one of the dinner guests snapped that casual wide-angle shot, to remember the ambience, the wine, the lighting, they didn't realize what else they'd captured. But someone else did. Because when that image was forwarded to a mutual friend of Chelsy's, with no malicious intent, just casual gossip, it set off a silent chain reaction. The photo got passed along, quietly, carefully, until it landed in the inbox of a man who doesn't do drama. Sam Cutmore-Scott, Chelsy's husband, the hotelier who deals in luxury, silence, and security. A man who has built his career and reputation on discretion. A man who has stayed far from the tabloids, even while married to a woman whose name still trends whenever Prince Harry is mentioned. And in that moment, he knew exactly what he was looking at. A relic, a ghost, a boundary that had been, perhaps unknowingly, crossed. Now, let's be fair. Sam is not reactive. He's not the kind of man who flips tables or punches walls. He's the kind of man who pauses, processes, and then acts with absolute clarity. So what did he see in that photo? He saw something old trying to become new again. He saw a husband reminiscing, maybe even relapsing. He saw a message, intentional or not. I still think about her. And here's the thing no one talks about. Men like Sam don't fear competition. They fear confusion, emotional ambiguity, unspoken attachments that fester in silence. And to Sam, this photo wasn't innocent nostalgia. It was a trigger, a warning sign, a test of whether the past had truly been buried, or simply hidden behind California sunlight and Netflix deals. Let's talk about the context of that image. When Harry and Chelsy were together, they were rarely photographed in raw moments. The press swarmed them. Most pictures were of them in cars, at clubs, dodging paparazzi. But this photo? It was taken by a friend. A private moment. No security. No chaos. Which means only one thing. Harry had kept it. All these years. Through breakups. Through Afghanistan. Through Meghan. Through royal fallout. He kept it. And now, in the supposed safety of Montecito, he put it out again. Why? Maybe he didn't mean anything by it. Maybe it was a moment of quiet rebellion. A nod to the man he once was. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a breadcrumb. A sign he didn't even realize he was leaving. For whom? Meghan? No. Chelsy? Possibly. But most likely for himself. Because sometimes, we put out pieces of our past not to be noticed by others, but to remind ourselves that they were real. But Sam? He noticed. And in that noticing, something shifted. Let me ask you something. If you found a framed photo of your spouse's ex, tucked into a quiet corner of their office, what would you do? Would you confront them? Would you ignore it? Or would you send a message, a controlled, deliberate warning, to the ghost still lingering in the background? Sam chose the latter. But we'll get to that. Back to the photo. After Sam saw it, he reportedly didn't speak to Chelsy immediately. He didn't need to. Because this wasn't about her. It was about him. His role. His boundary. His line in the sand. And it's here we uncover something even deeper. Sam had tolerated whispers. The occasional tabloid headline linking Chelsy to her past. The The social media comments under her posts, Harry's one true love, they were so good together, should have been her. But he knew she didn't invite those echoes. She lived her life forward. But this was different. This was Harry opening a door that had been long sealed. This was Harry, knowingly or not, projecting a message that hadn't been invited. And Sam responded in kind. Before he sent the message, he made a few calls. Quiet ones. To mutual friends. To one or two well-placed legal advisors. Not to threaten, but to calibrate. He asked questions, gathered information, verified the story, and once he was sure, he composed a message. A single line. Not dramatic, not accusatory, but unambiguous. You had your moment. Now let her have peace. Delivered not by email, not through lawyers, but the old way, through someone trusted. A mutual link. The kind of method that ensures deniability, but guarantees the message is received. And Prince Harry? He got the message. Loud and clear. But did he understand it? That's where the tension grows. Because insiders claim Harry didn't react with anger. He reacted with guilt. Shock. A moment of self-awareness that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't buried the past as deeply as he thought. And for Meghan, it was a reckoning. Because the photo had been hanging not just in Harry's office, but in their home. A home built on the promise of a new beginning. A home where the past wasn't supposed to follow. But it had, in the form of a sunset. A smile. A girl who once said no to royalty and yes to a quieter life. The photo has since been removed, according to sources. No trace of it remains. But the damage? It's done. Because once something is seen, it can't be unseen. And once a boundary is crossed, even by accident, the repair is never simple. Especially not when love, legacy, and silence are on the line. So now we ask, was this photo just a mistake? Or was it a confession? And if it was a confession, what comes next? Because Harry's reply, the one he sent after receiving Sam's message, wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't angry. It was something far more dangerous. Honest. And in that honesty, the next phase of this emotional triangle begins. What do you say to a prince? A man raised in palaces. Coached in protocol. Armored by legacy. What do you say when that prince, years after your wife closed the chapter, hints, even subtly, that maybe, just maybe, he wishes she hadn't? You don't shout. You don't post. You don't go to the press. You say just enough. And let the silence do the rest. That's exactly what Sam Cutmore-Scott did. After the photograph. After the dinner. After the whispers reached London and passed discreetly through those aristocratic back channels. He didn't scream. He didn't threaten. He wrote a sentence. 7 words. You had your moment. Now let her have peace. Let's break that down. Because in those 7 words are years of history. A warning. A declaration. And a clear boundary. You had your moment. Translation. You were a part of her life once. A big part. We all know that. No one is denying it. But it's over. Past tense. Done. Now let her have peace. Translation. Stop dragging her back in. Emotionally, privately, subtly, or otherwise. Whether you meant to or not, you cracked open a wound she has spent a decade healing. That ends now. But let's not romanticize it too much. Sam wasn't speaking as some poetic figure defending his wife's honor in a Shakespearean duel. He was speaking as a man, a husband, a father, a protector, and, let's be honest, the one man who holds something Prince Harry no longer does, Chelsy's heart. So how exactly did Sam send the message? Not by text, not by email, but through a mutual friend. One of those discreet operators who floats between London, Oxford, Montecito, and Mayfair. A man who's been on shooting weekends at Balmoral, but also knows how to slip through LAX unnoticed. The message was verbal, delivered face to face, not written down, not traceable. And that's important, because once you put it in writing, it's escalation. This was containment, a quiet ultimatum, a line in the sand, drawn with velvet gloves. Now, the friend tasked with delivering the message wasn't just a courier. He was the message, a figure Harry knew, trusted, a man whose presence alone signaled, this isn't tabloid fodder. This is real. According to sources close to that conversation, Harry listened without interrupting. He didn't deny the dinner, didn't argue about the photo, didn't push back on what was said. He nodded, took it in, and then said something even more revealing than denial. I never meant to disrespect. But some things don't end just because we want them to. Stop for a second. Read that again. I never meant to disrespect. But some things don't end just because we want them to. That wasn't a rebuttal. That was a confession. A veiled, weary, aching confession. Harry had crossed a line. Maybe not publicly, maybe not physically, but emotionally? He was back in territory he thought he'd left long ago. And for Meghan, this wasn't just a moment. It was a revelation. Sources claim that when Harry told her about the message and admitted what he'd said at dinner, she didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't throw anything. She went quiet. Still, that kind of quiet that comes after the earthquake. Because for all of Meghan's confidence, for all her poise, for all her public appearances, this was something else entirely. This wasn't press scrutiny. This wasn't royal rivalry. This was private betrayal. Not because Harry had cheated, but because Harry had longed. And longing is harder to forgive. Let's talk about the emotional stakes here. Imagine building a new life with someone, uprooting your world, facing smear campaigns, leaving your family behind, having children, surviving a storm, and then learning that, deep down, your partner might still carry a candle for someone they were never forced to leave. Because Chelsy didn't leave Harry for scandal. She didn't cheat. She didn't ghost him. She simply said, "This life is not for me." She said no, and Harry never got to change her mind. For men like him, that's a scar that doesn't scab over. And now, years later, he'd finally admitted it. To himself, to his guests, to his wife, and through a message passed hand to hand, to the one man who really mattered now. So how did Sam react when the message came full circle? Sources say he didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't even bring it up again. He simply made a note, a mental one, that the boundary had been laid, and if it was crossed again, the gloves would come off. Because here's something you may not know. Sam has access to legal counsel that doesn't leave paper trails, access to digital specialists who monitor press mentions in real time, access to media PR handlers trained to block, delay, and dismantle stories before they go viral. He doesn't make scenes. He prevents them. And that's where Harry found himself. On the receiving end of a power he didn't expect and couldn't control. Not royal power. Not tabloid power. The quiet power of someone with nothing to prove. Someone who didn't need to win a popularity contest because he'd already won the only heart that mattered. But here's the part that complicates everything. Harry didn't fight back. He didn't go scorched earth. He didn't double down. He sat with it. And then, days later, he reportedly sent a short reply through the same intermediary. "I understand. I truly do. I wish her happiness. Always." At first glance, it reads like closure. But look again. "I wish her happiness." That's not the language of someone who's moved on. That's the language of someone who lost and still cares. And in that caring, a new layer of complexity unfolds. Because now, the emotional math isn't just about Harry, Chelsy, and Sam. It's about Meghan. And her reaction? According to insiders, it was clinical. Not cold. Not cruel. Clinical. She removed the remaining photo albums from Harry's office. She asked, without raising her voice, that anything connected to Chelsy be boxed and stored. She changed the code on her personal home office door. And then, she scheduled a meeting with their Netflix team. Because if Harry was still haunted by old love stories, she would write new ones. On camera. Under lights. With better scripts. But the real drama, the real pain, wasn't in the photo or the message. It was in the look Meghan reportedly gave Harry the night after it all came to light. A single sentence. Barely audible, but heavy with meaning. "If you wanted her, why did you choose me?" Harry didn't answer. Not right away. And that silence? Maybe the loudest sound in this entire saga. Because when love is questioned, and the past resurfaces, and the boundaries are drawn, the real battlefield isn't public. It's private. And behind the smiles and charity work and celebrity friends, that battlefield is just heating up. What do you say when the past knocks louder than the present? When your heart betrays you, not in a tabloid headline, not in an affair, but in a moment of raw, unguarded truth. For Prince Harry, that moment came not with a scandal, but with a whisper. "I was never over her." He didn't say it to the press. He didn't say it to Chelsy. He didn't even say it to Meghan, at least not at first. He said it alone, to a friend. In a phone call he probably never imagined would be repeated, let alone leaked. But it was. And when those 7 words made their way back to someone close to Chelsy Davy, they changed everything. Again. Let's go back. The fallout from the Montecito dinner had cooled, at least on the surface. The photo was removed. Sam Cutmore-Scott's quiet message had been delivered. Harry had responded diplomatically. Meghan had gone into damage control mode. But for Harry, the real storm was only just beginning. Because when you admit, even privately, that you still carry feelings for someone long gone, the illusion of healing shatters. And something inside you either breaks open or hardens. In Harry's case, it cracked. Insiders say that in the days following the ultimatum from Sam, Harry withdrew. Not physically, not dramatically, but emotionally. He was present, at home, in meetings, during scheduled Zoom calls with charities, but disconnected. His replies were shorter, his eyes distant, his energy hollow. He stopped mentioning new podcast ideas, delayed notes on a sustainability initiative, even skipped 2 sessions with his therapist. And then, one evening, he made a call to a friend from the old days, one of the few still in his life from before Meghan, a man who'd been there through Sandhurst, through the first breakup with Chelsy, through those drunken nights when Harry questioned everything. The conversation was private. But like all things royal, it didn't stay that way. What leaked wasn't a full transcript, just a few fragments. But they were enough. She was the only one who didn't want anything from me. She didn't want the palace. She didn't want the spotlight. She just wanted me. And I let that go. And then, quiet, almost like an admission whispered into a mirror. I was never over her. Let that land. Because this isn't just an emotional confession. This is emotional time travel. Harry, stripped of titles, royal obligations, and the protective bubble of monarchy, finally saying the one thing he'd spent a decade suppressing. That Chelsy Davy wasn't just a chapter. She was the turning point. And he never turned back fully. Now, it's important to understand. This isn't about rekindling a romance. Chelsy is married. She has a child. She's built a life designed precisely to avoid this kind of royal whiplash. This isn't about what could be. It's about what never stopped being, at least in Harry's heart. And that difference is devastating. Because Meghan, at this point, knew something had shifted. She could feel it. This wasn't just about a photo anymore. Or an awkward dinner comment. This was about residue. Emotional residue. The kind that seeps into your current life and stains everything. Even the things you thought were solid. The marriage, the mission, the new identity. All suddenly shaky. Meghan reportedly confronted Harry again. But not with fire. With ice. According to a close source, she asked him flat out, "Are you still in love with her?" And Harry? He didn't say yes. But he didn't say no either. He reportedly paused, too long, and replied, "I don't know if I ever stopped." That sentence, by all accounts, was the end of the conversation. Not the end of the marriage, but the end of the illusion. Because if love is a choice, then Harry's heart had been split in ways no title could fix. Now let's flip the lens for a moment. Chelsy Davy, the woman at the center of all this, without ever asking to be. Sources say she was blindsided by Harry's leaked phone call. She hadn't spoken to him in over a year. No texts. No casual check-ins. No secret letters. She had moved on. She thought he had too. So when she learned about the "I was never over her" comment, through a friend who heard it third hand, she reportedly responded with just 3 words. "This has to stop." And yet, she didn't deny it. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't roll her eyes and dismiss Harry as desperate. Because the truth is messier than anyone wants to admit. Chelsy and Harry didn't end because of scandal. They ended because of reality. Because Chelsy said, "I won't live in a fishbowl." Because Harry said, "But I can't leave it." They were both right. And that's what hurts the most. Because it's one thing to lose someone to betrayal. It's another to lose them to timing. And timing has no villain, just regret. Let's talk for a moment about what this does to a man like Harry. He's not the party prince anymore. He's not the royal rebel. He's not even the Duke of Sussex in the way he once was. He's a father, a husband, a man trying to build a new life out of the ashes of an old one. But if part of him is still staring backward, how long before the cracks spread? How long before Meghan, or Harry himself, admits the unspoken truth? That maybe this marriage began as a rescue mission. And maybe it still is. Meghan, by all accounts, is regrouping. She's reasserting control over their brand, their messaging, Their narrative, Netflix, podcasts, book deals, all being subtly steered to reinforce one thing. The Sussexes are unshakable. But behind the scenes, there's shakiness. Because love can survive attacks from outside, but surviving doubt from within, that's the real challenge. And the most chilling part? Harry hasn't denied it. Not to Meghan, not to himself, not to anyone. Because when he said, "I was never over her," he crossed a line. Not with Sam, not with Chelsy, with himself. Because now he has to live with that truth. And so does everyone around him. Which raises the question, what happens when a man finally admits the thing he spent a lifetime avoiding? What happens when a prince acknowledges, not to the press, but to his own soul, that he may have married a new future, but never stopped mourning the old one? Because what comes next isn't about love, it's about loyalty. And whether the woman standing beside him now, the one who's endured the press, the palace, the exile, is willing to stay when she finally realizes she was Plan B. There are words you speak out loud, and then there are the ones you write, never intending anyone else to read them, especially not the world, especially not him. And yet, here it was, a handwritten letter, postmarked from Cape Town, sealed with a wax insignia no one recognized, but written, unmistakably, in Chelsy Davy's signature slant. Or was it? Because the moment it leaked, the world asked one question. The same question echoing across royal circles, WhatsApp groups, and Montecito kitchens. Did Chelsy Davy really write this? Or is this an elaborate hoax, a forged confession, planted to further destabilize Prince Harry's already crumbling image? Let's unpack what we know. The letter surfaced quietly. No headlines. No tabloid expose. It didn't explode, it simmered. Whispers of it began in tight-knit social circles, passed around in encrypted messages, allegedly intercepted by a friend of a friend who wasn't supposed to see it. It was dated, curiously, just 2 weeks after Harry's Montecito dinner. The timing alone was enough to raise eyebrows. But the content? That's what lit the fuse. In delicate cursive, the letter opened like a wound. Sometimes, I think the bravest thing I ever did was walk away. Other times, I wonder if it was cowardice disguised as wisdom. Pause. That single sentence split readers down the middle. Was it closure? Regret? A veiled olive branch? Or something more dangerous? A reopening of an emotional wound carefully stitched shut for over a decade? The letter continued, touching on themes that sounded eerily personal and far too intimate for public eyes. You were chaos and clarity. I loved you in the quiet hours and feared you in the headlines. I never doubted your heart, only your world. Then this. I chose peace. I chose privacy. But I didn't stop wondering if the storm was worth weathering. And finally, if this never reaches you, maybe that's best. Some ghosts are kinder when left unspoken. No signature, just a capital C at the bottom. Not even Chelsy, just C. And yet, it sent the entire royal rumor mill into overdrive. Was this the letter Chelsy never meant to send, but did? Was it intercepted? Or, as some conspiracy-minded observers suggest, was it planted? Let's rewind to the first person who allegedly saw the letter. A well-known London art dealer who reportedly recognized the handwriting immediately. According to one insider, he's been friends with Chelsy since university. He showed the letter, privately, to another friend. That friend, knowingly or not, photographed it. And then, that spread. Was this a betrayal of Chelsy's trust? Or did she anticipate it? The Davy family has remained silent. No denial. No confirmation. Sam Cutmore-Scott reportedly made one private call after the leak, to a close friend of Chelsy's in London, allegedly asking only 4 words. Did she write it? The response? I honestly don't know. Which, in this circle, is as close to maybe as you'll ever get. And that's where the fire caught. Because once again, Chelsy had re-entered the narrative. And this time, it wasn't because of Harry. It was because of her, or whoever decided to write as her. Now let's break this down. Handwriting analysts. Yes, they were brought in, say the style closely matches verified Chelsy notes from over a decade ago. Specifically, the way she loops her lowercase gs and the wide spacing between her e's and a's. But critics argue that this level of forgery isn't difficult in today's world. Anyone with access to her old emails, notebooks, even court signatures, could technically replicate the slant. So is it real? That depends on who you ask. Some royal insiders believe it's 100% authentic, a letter Chelsy did write, perhaps as a form of emotional journaling, never expecting it to reach anyone beyond her closest circle. Others believe it's a calculated manipulation, either by someone hoping to sabotage Meghan and Harry's already strained image, or worse, by someone close to Chelsy, hoping to trigger something unspoken back into motion. Let's talk motive. Why would Chelsy write such a letter? And if she did, why now? After all these years? After a quiet marriage? After a baby? After building a business built specifically on avoiding the press? Why would she risk it? Unless something stirred. Unless Harry's comments, the dinner, the photograph, the confession, reached her ears in a way she hadn't expected. Remember, silence doesn't equal immunity. Sometimes silence just means unprocessed emotion. And sometimes those emotions boil over in ink. Let me ask you something. Have you ever written a letter you never planned to send? Just to feel it? To shape the words your mouth would never say? That's what this letter reads like. A purge. A release. A soft exhale of something long held in the ribcage. But here's the twist. The most revealing part of the letter wasn't what was said. It was the postmark. Cape Town. Specifically, a residential district known to house several Davy family properties. Now, skeptics point out, postmarks can be faked. Letters can be redirected. Photos can be staged. But the Davy family's silence? That's the loudest confirmation of all. They could have denied it. They didn't. And Prince Harry? Reportedly, when the letter was shown to him, through a back channel, he froze. Literally froze. Sat down. Didn't speak for a full minute. Then, quietly asked, has Meghan seen it? Because that's the other landmine here. If Chelsy wrote the letter, and Harry read it before Meghan did, that's not just emotional betrayal. That's a crack in trust. And Meghan, according to sources, had not seen the letter, at least not at first. When she did, she reportedly didn't speak about it for 3 days. No reaction, no confrontation, just silence. Until finally, she told a close friend. She may not want him, but she still has him. Ouch. That sentence alone says everything. Because even if Chelsy had no intention of sending that letter, even if it was a private note taken out of context, its mere existence shattered whatever emotional stability remained in Montecito. Harry, at this point, was spiraling. He didn't know whether to reply, whether to ignore it, whether to show it to Meghan or bury it. Because what do you do when a ghost writes you a love letter? Even a subtle one. Even one unsigned. Even one never meant to arrive. You don't burn it. You don't ignore it. You read it again, and again, and again, until every sentence becomes a question mark. Because now the question isn't did Chelsy write it? The question is, what will Harry do now that he's read it? Because sometimes the past doesn't knock. It writes. And when it does, the present holds its breath. What kind of man marries the woman Prince Harry never forgot? What kind of man earns the loyalty of someone who once walked hand in hand with royalty, then deliberately stepped back? More importantly, what kind of man feels so certain in his role that he sends an unmistakable message to the Duke of Sussex himself? His name isn't famous. He doesn't have a title. No memoir. No reality show. No Instagram blue check. But his presence? It's undeniable. Meet Sam Cutmore-Scott, the quietly powerful, deliberately elusive husband of Chelsy Davy. He may not grace headlines often, but don't let that fool you. In the world of British high society, sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one who never raises his voice. So who is he really? Let's start with the basics. Sam Cutmore-Scott was born into a family of influence, but not the flashy kind. His background is steeped in old-school, generational wealth. Not royalty, but close enough to understand the rules they live by and the dangers they pose. Educated at Eton, yes, that Eton, Sam walked the same hallowed halls as princes, prime ministers, and CEOs. It's where tradition meets power, where future movers and shakers are molded, and where reputations are built or destroyed. He went on to study at Oxford, focusing on business and strategy, eventually stepping into the world of luxury hospitality. Not the Hilton kind. The curated, elite, behind-the-scenes experience reserved for dignitaries, billionaires, and celebrities who don't want to be seen, but do want to be remembered. He now serves as director of the Harper, an ultra-upscale boutique hotel in Norfolk. Think hushed hallways, private chefs, and five-star everything. The kind of place where discretion isn't a bonus, it's the brand. And that alone tells you everything you need to know about Sam. He doesn't post. He doesn't leak. He doesn't chase. He protects. He curates. He controls his environment. And when Chelsy Davy, the former wild child turned jewelry entrepreneur, crossed paths with him, it wasn't through flashy introductions or celebrity mixers. It was through the quieter, more selective circles of old money and legacy networks. They were introduced, reportedly, by mutual friends at a private London function. The setting? Quiet. The vibe? Intentional. Chelsy had just launched her own luxury jewelry line, Aya, and was shifting her life far away from paparazzi and press junkets. She wasn't looking for attention. She was looking for peace. And Sam offered exactly that. Where Harry had once been the whirlwind, Sam was the harbor. He didn't flinch when she talked about her past. He didn't question why she didn't speak about Harry. He didn't care about tabloids. He cared about Chelsy, not the myth, the woman. Let's be clear, this wasn't a rebound. This wasn't some spite-driven upgrade to one-up a royal ex. This was chemistry. Subtle, stable, sincere. And in a world where every public figure is one tweet away from scandal, Sam was, and remains, an anomaly. Even their engagement was quiet. No social media explosion. No photo ops. No diamond ring Instagram soft launches. Just a whisper among friends. And then a wedding. A very private one. Held in 2022, the ceremony was reportedly intimate, surrounded by only close family and friends. No press. No palace drama. No awkward seating arrangements. Chelsy wore a minimalist gown. Sam wore a quiet smile. They said their vows, welcomed their baby boy soon after, and retreated into the kind of life most public figures only pretend to crave. Now, you might ask, how does a man like Sam feel about his wife's past with a royal? Does it bother him? Does he ignore it? Does he secretly resent it? According to multiple sources, none of the above. Sam knows who Chelsy was. More importantly, he knows who she is now. He didn't marry a royal accessory. He married a fiercely independent, emotionally intelligent woman who chose to walk away from a life millions dream about. And that kind of self-awareness? That doesn't intimidate a man like Sam. It impresses him. So what changed? Why? After years of silence, did Sam reportedly send a message to Harry? Let's be clear. This wasn't a jealous husband lashing out. It was a strategic decision. Because there's one thing Sam doesn't tolerate: intrusion. When a line is crossed, he doesn't rant. He responds. And if the rumors are true, that Harry's recent